Good morning. Welcome to the Windward Buddhist Temple Family Dharma Service. My name is Emma Fujikawa and I'll be your MC. We will begin with the ringing of the temple bell or kancho that signifies the beginning of a temple service. It is a deep and sacred ritual steeped in ancient tradition. It is the calling of the people to come together to listen to the Dharma or teachings. The temple bell represents the gratitude and deep appreciation of the members, friends, and guests of the Windward Buddhist Temple. Please sit quietly in your seat. Please rise for the meditation followed by the chanting of the Vandana and Tisarana by the congregation in Pali and English. Please be seated. We will now have the Sanbu Jo and Aspiration by Reverend Dr. Bert Sumikawa.
Acknowledge the presence of Amida Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, and all the Buddhas of the 10 directions to this remembrance service. Namo Amida Butsu. Fortunate are we who, upon having heard the divine truth and having been given everlasting life, may leave this human existence in peace and tranquility, be surrounded in Amida's infinite wisdom and inconceivable compassion. We honor with deep gratitude the members, families, friends, and pets of the Wynwood Buddhist Temple who have passed away in the month of January. With deepest gratitude to the boundless, inconceivable blessings of Amida Buddha, we take eternal refuge in the three treasures of this teaching. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu.
We will now have the remembrance of individuals and pets who passed away this month in any year. Reverend Dr. Sumikawa will hit the gong several times to start this portion of the service. Then the names of the deceased will be announced. Please go forward to offer incense. Then Reverend Dr. Sumikawa will hit the gong again for the next name. After the last name is called and incense offered, he will hit the gong several times and then go directly to the red Jodo Shinshu service book for the Sutra Jusei Ge on page 54. Matsuguchi. Kazutomo Ochikubo. Otojiro Asada and Amy Oyadomari. Roy Goya. Sharon Kukino. Lillian Kyoko Ueda. Masaru Harada.
극교미쇼모
Please rise and recite our pledge that is in the purple WBT Supplemental Service Book on page 44. Reaching out to others,
Share a smile and gentle words, just like the Buddha, who always calls out with aloha. Breaking away from my greed, anger, and ignorance, I will try to live in peace and harmony, just like the Buddha, who shares tranquility and kindness with all. Moving forward from self-centeredness, I will share a life of joy and sorrow with others, just like the Buddha, whose caring heart always embraces us. Realizing that I live because of others, I will strive to live life to the fullest with an attitude of gratitude, just like the Buddha who promises to embrace us all. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida.
Please continue to stand for the Gatha Listen to His Voice in the Brown Praises of the Buddha book on page 92. Today's Dharma talk will be given by Reverend Dr. Bert Sumikawa.
Morning, everyone, and welcome once again to the Wynwood Buddhist Temple's Remembrance Day service, or known in Japanese as Shotsuki Hoyo. And I think I want to explain this to you a bit, what Shotsuki Hoyo really means. So on the first slide, you see the entire word for it, called Shotsuki Hoyo. Sho means to commemorate, or to appreciate, or to embrace. Tsuki, of course, is month, or moon, as in the Bondan song, you know. But in this case, Tsuki is read as month. Ho, of course, means Dharma, or the teachings. And yo means essence, or the core of things. So Tsuki Hoyo then means we commemorate, to appreciate, to embrace this month of remembrance, this month learning the Dharma from all those that have passed away. That is which is the essence, the core of Buddhism. Okay, so we can turn that off now. Thank you. I don't dare touch it, I might get it all wrong again. Last week, we observed the annual memorial service for the founder of the Honganji, Shinran. But what's striking is that he never once said that he was a founder of the Pure Land sect of Buddhism. He only said that he was clarifying what his teacher, Honen, had taught him. As you know, various forms of Pure Land Buddhism existed in one way or the other, with varying degrees of understanding since the ancient times. The main Pure Land sect of Honen, as you may know, is in the Macaulay area, adjacent to the freeway near Shriners Hospital. As you go down the freeway towards Waikiki, on the right-hand side, you see this pink structure. That's the main Jodo Shu temple. So ours is called the Honganji, the true Pure Land sect. Let's put our hands together in reverence as I read these words taken from the preface of the True Teaching, Practice, and Realization of the Pure Land Way that is written by Shinran Shonin. I reflect within myself the universal vow, difficult to fathom, is indeed a great vessel bearing us across the ocean difficult to cross. The unhindered light is a sun of wisdom, dispersing the darkness of our ignorance. Namo Amida Butsu. One thing that I believe all of us find that is so unique about Buddhism and why it may feel so appealing to us and to many others as well is that it is okay to learn what other people in other religions say, how they may think, what their thought processes are, and what their belief system might be. I dropped something. See, so now I don't know what I'm talking about now. And so many interesting articles appear in the newspapers and magazines every so often. And I try to relate them to our teachings of Jodo Shinshu. I believe that one of our past Sunday speakers, the name of Reverend Sherman Thompson, tries to do this when he does his sermons when he was a chief chaplain at the Kamehameha schools. I've heard him speak at some Christian funerals that he conducted, and he does just that. He was a very popular non-denominational member of the clergy. In his messages, if you close your eyes, you would think that he was a Buddhist priest, while interjecting the Trinity and Jesus in between. In fact, he and I did several non-denominational services together. It was very accommodating. It's too bad that he is now retired and lives on the island of Kauai. You know, I ran into him accidentally once when I went to Maui to stand in line to rent a car. And he said, I went there to have lunch with Reverend Richard Tennis. You may remember him, right? He came here a couple of times. He now lives in Tennessee with his wife. He told me that he bought a home there for the price of a closet in Hawaii. But he's getting used to the cold, but it does get cold in Tennessee. But as I was about to say, one such article appeared in the Honolulu Advertiser one day in the faith section that I would like to share with you. It was entitled, Our Egos Hinder Spiritual Quest, and was written by Alice Inoue, who is an ordained minister and a life guide. She says that the reason why it is so hard for most of us to come from a place of love and spirituality, even though we know that it is what is needed in most of our interactions with others, is on a small word that plays a big role in our lives. And that word is ego. That it's a part of each of us. And is a powerful voice within us that wants to stand out, be special, and be important at all costs. She says that our ego has no other goal than to fulfill its own agenda, and it doesn't care about love, spirituality, compassion, trust, or forgiveness. So while spirituality is about unity and oneness, the ego prides itself on separation and on control. the desire to win, to be right, to judge, to gossip, and to complain are the ways in which the ego thrives and basks in the light of its own superiority. I am right, and you are wrong, for example. So she goes on to say that if you have the power in each moment to choose to either empower the ego or to empower the spirit of love, well, one may feel that the ego is so interwoven into your personality that you cannot control your thoughts or actions. You're on the right track when you simply become aware of it, simply become aware of your ego and see it work from a detached perspective. After an interaction with someone, you may notice and say, gee, was that my ego talking? She says, not to discount the thought of awareness. That awareness is one step towards strengthening your connection with your spirit. As you make a conscious effort to choose love, your connection to spirit will strengthen, and then your ego will have to step aside. Just as two cars cannot park in the same stall at the same time, the ego and the spirit are incompatible. The best way to know if you're coming from the heart or your ego is to look at your interactions with others and how they might play out if you were connected with your spirit. If coming from your spirit, all actions and reactions would come from love, forgiveness, and humility. Coming from a place of love, though, requires an effort to be more understanding, less judgmental, and more compassionate. Trusting that any challenge that comes into your life is there for your growth and evolution gives it a perspective. When we minimize the ego's control and cultivate spiritual interaction, we embrace our interactions and choices with compassion and bring more happiness and joy to our lives. There is this story about a wealthy man that had just purchased a very expensive and powerful new sports car. Of course, you know, you don't spend so much money on a high-powered car just to drive in a slow city traffic, right? And so one sunny day, he drove out of the city into the serene farming country. On reaching the speed camera-free zone, he pressed hard on the accelerator and felt his sports car surge. So with the engine roaring loudly and the sleek new car screaming along the country road, the man smiled with the acceleration of the high speed. Meanwhile, though, a farmer was leaning on the padlock gate as a car sped by. Yelling at the top of his voice in order to be heard above the noise of the sports car, the farmer shouted, "Pig!" The man in the sports car knew what he was doing, and that he was insensitive to the surroundings, and he thought, what the hell? I have a right to enjoy myself. So he turned and yelled at the farmer, "Who are you calling a pig?" In those few seconds that he took his eyes off the road, his car ran into the pig right in the middle of the road. His brand new sports car was a total wreck, and he spent many days in the hospital. Lost a great deal of money, not to mention the loss of his sports car. The pig, of course, died. In this story, the man's ego had caused him to badly misjudge the warning of a kind-hearted farmer. In Buddhism, we refer to the idea of ego as attachment. Our world is nothing but the manifestation of the oneness of life, where all beings, animals or inanimate, exist interdependently people impose distinctions and separate what is mine from what is not mine. This discrimination arises from an attachment in man called blind craving that differentiates oneness from the plurality of manyness. Then we have conflicts, misunderstandings, and friction with one another. Let me give you another example. Periodically, Reverend Furusawa of the Betsuing, the main temple on Pali Highway, asked me to go over his Dharma messages and to suggest corrections in his choice of words. I'm not an English major by any means. He gave this Dharma talk that I thought was very good. He said that he was now in charge of arranging altar flowers. He said that depending on what angle he looked at the arrangement, it looked very different. He always arranges the flowers at a sink behind the main temple. Well, at the sink, he thought, oh, I've done a beautiful job arranging the flowers. And so he put them up on the altar table, looked at it, and found that they look very different. The altar table is much higher than the sink. When putting the flowers on the altar, he found that some of the flowers were too long and some were too short. So back and forth he went many times, because each time he looked at it from a different angle. The same object looked completely different depending on the angle on which he looked at. So when he looked at the same object, when we look at the same object, we see it completely differently, depending on where we look at it from, how we look at it, and what angle we look at it. But we tend to stick to our own limited view and assume that our view is right. I was once watching a teacher of flower arrangement look at some of his students, and this student painstakingly arranged a flower which was so beautiful to her, to me too. But when the teacher went there, she turned one leaf and said, "There, isn't that better?" I said to myself, well, that's what you think, you know. But anyway, that's the way they are. But because we tend to stick to our own limited view and assume that our view is right. Because of our human nature, we are always wearing this shell called self. As a result, we have the tendency to discriminate between ourselves and others, other things, and other beings as well. You all know the story of the 7 people who were blindfolded and asked to touch the elephant and say what it was, right? One touched the leg and thought it was a pillar. The other one touched the tail, thought it was a rope. The third touched the body and said it was a wall. One touched the ear and said it was a fan. The person who touched the nose said it was a hose, and so on. Same thing. So they had a big argument. Although, as we have seen, all things and all beings are interconnected, we always discriminate between ourselves and other beings. The Buddha taught selflessness as one of his basic teachings. It is our mistaken ego, selfishness, that causes all human troubles and sufferings. We don't realize that we're able to live and enjoy life only because of other people and other things. If one really understands this truth, cannot help but become more humble and truly learn to appreciate others. Realizing the truth that all beings and all things throughout the world and universe are interdependent and interconnected on each other, our discrimination is minimized. But we are unable to do this, no matter how hard we try to distinguish it by our act of trying to do so. Also may cause a discrimination as well. The realization of this in Buddhism is represented as Amida Buddha. Amida Buddha perfectly extinguishes this discrimination. Amida Buddha therefore never discriminates between all beings and all things. It's always embracing us without any discrimination. It is this realization that liberates us. Although we are liberated by Amida Buddha through what is called Shinjing, or loosely translated as through the grace of Amida Buddha, we in our present life cannot extinguish this discrimination completely. The realization of this is the Nembutsu, Namo Amida Butsu. So from the viewpoint of Amida Buddha, there is no discrimination. So as we listen to the teachings of Shakyamuni, the Enlightened One, it is this realization that destroys our suffering. In a Midweek Magazine article by Dr. J. Sakashita in Misfit Spirits, if you recall reading about him, he wrote that according to the Buddhist tradition, the Buddha gave 84,000 teachings to help all beings break free from the chain of suffering. That number underscores the significance of the problems of suffering in Buddhism. He wrote that there are basically three kinds of suffering. One is suffering due to physical, mental, and emotional pain. This one is readily apparent and easily understood, right? Although this type can be excruciating, it's not the most profound kind. The second is suffering due to impermanence. Each moment quickly fades just as it arises. In other words, whenever we experience happiness, it is inevitable that we will soon begin to experience the loss of that happiness. The third is that suffering is due to the inherent state of things. This form, though subtle, may also be the most profound. It arises from the deep uneasiness we feel considering the uncertainty of conditions in the world. It's generally taught in Buddhist classes that the Buddha is like a physician who recognizes an ailment or sufferings, diagnoses the source of this ailment called craving or ignorance, or the three poisons, and finally prescribes this treatment for that ailment in the form of the Eightfold Path. This, in effect, is a description of the Four Noble Truths, the first Dharma lesson that was taught by the Buddha upon his enlightenment under the Bodhi tree, which was only achieved after receiving and after having taken the bowl of porridge given by the maiden Sujata. A couple years ago, I think, on a Bodhi day, we were treated to some rice porridge, if you recall. That was before the pandemic. Yeah. Shinran Shonin says in one of his hymns, "Those who, aspiring for the pure land of happiness, do not realize Shinjing, that is other power, doubt the Buddha's inconceivable wisdom, and therefore dwell in the borderland or the realm of indolence and pride." In other words, we continue to allow ourselves to maintain the conceit that we are good, in which we foolishly rely on ourselves, reflect knowingly on our evil heart, and judge people as good or bad. This self-centered practice or ignorance, this foolish, lazy pride, is a reason that we separate ourselves from others, and thereby the cause of nothing but ongoing pain and suffering within our hearts and in all the world as well. So, thank you very much for listening, and let's put our hands together once again in reverence. The inconceivable working of Buddha Dharma is such that external hindrances and karmic fetters do not obstruct us. Hence, the universal primal vow of Amida is termed the decisive cause of birth in the Pure Land. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda Butsu. Thank you very much, and have a great Sunday. You'll have a great rest of Sunday.
Thank you, Reverend Burt. Please rise for the Gatha at our altar in the Brown Praises of the Buddha book on page 16, and continue to stand for the Nembutsu. May the boundless and supreme light of wisdom shine within our hearts and minds and guide us all to walk the Buddha's path of awakening for the sake of all beings. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namandam. Please be seated. We will now have announcements.
Good morning, everyone. Oh, Hawaii barely won last night. They're supposed to win big. Thank you, Reverend Burt. That was a wonderful message. It reminds me of the time that I thought I drew a perfectly good-looking horse, but somebody said, "Oh, is that your dog?" So I gave it up. Thank you also to Lisa and Emma for being our MCs today. Cynthia rang the concho. Thank you, Cynthia. Jerry was our greeter. Thank you, Jerry. And again, back to Lisa. She did, of course, a wonderful job playing the piano. Refreshments today is provided by Team C, led by Merle. Announcement, last week I mentioned about, and Reverend Burt described the meditation sessions. That'll be starting this Thursday and continuing every Thursday. Meditation sessions Well, I have the flyer on the bulletin board so you can read about it. Any questions, or if you're interested, please contact Reverend Burt. Cynthia has an announcement.
Good morning. Okay, so next Sunday is our first Sunday of the month already, and it's our family service. So our intergenerational activity that Prudence is planning is going to be to create a pop-up Valentine's Day card with a special message. I don't have a sample, but I think it's going to be really nice, so be sure to come, okay? Then the second message is we are also celebrating birthdays next month, or next week. So please be here. Thank you.
Any additional messages? If not, if you could turn to page 126 of your red service book for the words of thanksgiving. We are truly grateful for this wonderful food, a gift of life. May we share the benefits with all beings. As we partake of this food, let us remember Amida Buddha's compassion, which surrounds all people and all forms of life. Namo Amida Butsu. Itadakimasu. Thank you, everybody.